On my Gaahleri Mobius Point 2 review, I mentioned that this airbrush is one of my favorite to work with. But as much as I enjoy it, there is still room for improvement, especially in its atomization and precision reach.
In that review, I demonstrated that simply by changing the needle specs, you can get a dramatic improvement from this airbrush. At the time, that was really just an example. More about providing some education on how airbrushes work than giving a permanent fix.
But I got a lot of interest and a lot of people asked me, okay, so what are the actual steps to make this kind of improvement permanent?
That's exactly what we're going to cover today. I'll walk you through the upgrade step by step, show you the tools you'll need, and explain not only how to do it, but also why it works.
Let's begin, shall we?
To really understand the logic behind this upgrade, we need to compare the Mobius Point 2 to the Mobius Point 3. I'm going to repeat why, because it's important to understand how these tools work.
It is widely acknowledged that the Mobius Point 3 has a better performance than the Point 2, and I agree, but there is a reason why.
When we look at the head assemblies, the air cap center hole on the Mobius Point 2 is smaller, and the air channels in the nozzle are more restricted compared to the Mobius Point 3.
The company did this intentionally to reduce air velocity and make the Mobius O2 more detail-oriented. That's a step in the right direction.
But here's the problem. The actual nozzle bore stayed the same. They didn't reduce the bore size or switch to a smaller needle. The Mobius Point 2 still uses the exact same needle as the Mobius Point 3. And while that needle works beautifully in the Point 3, where higher air velocity gives you better atomization and precision reach, in the Point 2 it's simply too chunky for the reduced airflow.
So the only real improvement we can make is to change the specs of the needle.
Now, I spend a lot of time with these tools. I study them, compare them, and I've basically memorized the measurements of all the nozzles in my collection. When you look for a needle that fits a .37mm bore, performs well between 12 and 15 psi, and delivers tight, precise spray patterns, the options are very limited. And I narrowed it down to two: the Iwata Custom Micron or the GSI Krios PS771 needle. They're very similar in design and performance, but the PS771 is a bit longer and cheaper. That's the one I'll show you today. There's just one problem. If you just drop the PS771 needle into the Mobius Point 2, the packing screw will leak inside the body. The shaft is not a match, which means no matter how much you tighten the packing screw, it won't create a seal. To fix it, we will add an O-ring that will fit the PS771 and doesn't require additional modifications to the existing one. You'll first need to extract the packing screw from the body of the Mobius Point 2. There are very useful tools you can buy to make your life easier when disassembling and reassembling an airbrush, and I'll showcase some of them in this video. I'll also drop a link for these tools in the description. If you're getting into airbrushing seriously, I think these tools are quite necessary, especially the soft pliers. Sometimes it can be tough to unscrew certain components, and you really don't want to scratch the chrome. These are the best tools for the job.
Just remember, when using pliers with airbrushes, they're only meant to unscrewing and disassembly. Once you're putting the airbrush back together, everything should always be hand-tightened.
The threads on an airbrush are very thin, and the slightest extra force can damage them. So, use pliers whenever you need to loosen parts. But for reassembly, always rely on your hands. Once we remove the packing screw, we'll keep it mounted on the needle packing screwdriver and then add the O-ring to it. Inside the body of the Mobius Point 2, you'll notice a white Teflon seal. That's what Gaahleri uses to prevent paint from traveling into the body of the airbrush. But the Teflon seal alone doesn't compress enough to create a proper seal for the PS771 needle. That's why we're adding the O-ring. You don't need to remove the Teflon seal, just leave it inside the body. Simply add the O-ring between the Teflon seal and the packing screw. That's all you'll need to create the seal.
Now, let's compare the performance of the Mobius Point 2 with the stock needle versus the upgraded PS771 needle.
First, we'll start by drawing a line with the Mobius Point 2 using the stock needle at a distance of 1.5 inches on the surface of the paper. Then, immediately after that, we'll draw lines with the Mobius using the PS771 needle. You can judge for yourself. The lines are much tighter, sharper, cleaner, and the halo around the line is gone.
Now, maybe from this perspective it doesn't look like a huge deal, but if you spend enough time around these tools, you recognize it as a massive difference.
Just to put it into perspective, I'll also compare it with the Iwata Custom Micron. First, I'll draw lines with the Micron, and then I'll draw lines with the Mobius Point 2 with the PS771 needle. As you can see, the results are very close.
With this small upgrade, the Mobius Point 2 becomes an absolute master in performance. So good that I will put it head to head with some of the best airbrushes in my collection, and even with some of the more expensive competitors out there.
In my original review, I gave the Mobius Point 2 a total score of 84 out of 100. With this upgrade, everything else that makes this airbrush great stays the same, but atomization and precision reach go from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. That brings it to a total score of 88 out of 100. This is all I got for today, and I hope it was useful. All the tools and parts I showed you, the PS771 needle, O-rings, soft pliers and more, are linked in the video description.
If you use those affiliate links, it won't cost you anything extra, but it really helps to support the channel and lets me keep making videos like this one. Thanks for considering it.
If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like and subscribe. And join me in the pursuit to become the fastest airbrush slinger in the West. Hey!